This is the FRC Roundtable, coming to you all the way from Minnesota. Your host team 2052 Nightcrawler presents this weekly FRC gathering where FIRST Robotics competition teams take cooperation off the field. Share your knowledge, give and get advice, solve a challenge, or celebrate what makes your team special. 3, 2, 1, go!
And there we go. My name's Scott Davis. I'm with Team 2052 Nightcrawler, and we are hosting this call. I would open the floor to anybody else who wants to share who they are and what team they're from.
I can go. Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm also from 2052 Nightcrawler. I'm our team captain. That's a little bit about me.
Hi, I'm Max. I'm from Team 2472.
Hello, I'm Sawyer. I'm in the same room, also from 2472.
I'm Andy from 7028.
I'm Nate, also from 2052.
Eric from Talon Robotics 2502.
I'm John from 2502. Hopefully my mic's not working.
I'm Ian from Team 3926, the Emperors.
This is Mark, also from 3926.
I'm Adi from 7028.
I'm Jacob from 7028.
Joseph from 2491.
I'm Michael from 2450.
Anybody else want to go? Oh, anyone else? Last call.
Hi, I'm Dossel. I'm from 2052 Nightcrawler. I'm a team advisor there.
All right. So if you're new to the call, we haven't had an agenda since the first meeting. I posted links in the comments, so I recorded the first meeting when we talked about Swerve, which is how this thing all started. And then some folks wanted to talk about kickoff the day after kickoff. So that was last week. Both of those recordings are in the comments. And tonight it's just once again, how's it going? No agenda. No, I don't want to say no rules, but don't feel obligated to share all your secret sauce. You know, if there's something that you want to keep back and hold for a surprise for your first competition, by all means, you should do that. But if you want to throw up your CAD model and share your screen, we're welcome to have you do that too. Ask questions. If you are struggling to get parts, ask if anyone has any extra parts. If you're struggling with ideas and you're looking for advice, feel free to do that as well. The whole goal here is for us to create better communities so teams can help teams. We do a pretty good job of that in Minnesota, but we're trying to build a broader and better community. So with that, I'll open the floor. Does anybody have any success stories they want to share or any challenges they want to ask advice on? What are you
Nobody
focusing
has
on?
a fourth thing auto yet?
Oh, there we go. What was that, John?
Nobody has a fourth thing auto yet? Wasn't it last year where Citrus Circuits at this point was already posting a 5-ball auto?
5-ball auto. That might be the case, actually. It sounds very reasonable for something Citrus would do.
So it sounds like this year's game is harder because they don't have a ridiculous video yet.
I'm curious, what are you starting with? What's your first thing you're prototyping? I'll share that Nightcrawler is starting with trying to figure out how to pick up cones, both standing up and laying down.
I think we've been beaten up on the intakes pretty well too, for the most part. Is there anybody that's planning to just pick up from the station where they just slide them into your robot?
Like from the portal or from the shells from like the double
Well, there's a
substation?
chute there that you can just slide it down. Right? Is anybody just
Well,
planning to?
I think the hard part with the chute is you can't guarantee it's going to land face up. So if you're planning on going from the chute, and that's like especially tricky if you're a robot that's planning on scoring in the hybrid nodes, is how are you going to pick it up if it lands tipped over?
Well, you can actually just drop it into your robot. So similar to 2017, right?
Depends on how you need to get it. If you built a funnel, you could push it down the chute nose first, and you'd feel pretty comfortable that it'd probably land in your funnel. But it also depends on how you're planning to score, I suppose.
Yeah, I was just wondering if anybody was going to try and use that, or if everybody was figuring they had to manipulate it.
Well, I will say that on the call last week, Ryan was on the call last week. He's not on the call yet tonight. He might pop in here, but he's got a thread on Chief Delphi that says that you should not try to pick up cones that are laying on their side. And so I'm interested to know how many people are planning to follow his advice, or how many people are trying to pick up a cone even if it's on its side.
I think he was getting at too, if resource wise, focus on maybe getting picking up from the substation and not worrying about the cones, if that's going to be an extra challenge, and focus on getting everything else done first. Kind of don't spread yourself too thin, I think was his message.
But if you have a mechanism that can pick up the cone, I mean, I think you probably have seen the one from the RE robot in 3 days. My favorite one that I like is that, is that one where they have the drawer, covered on a paddle system on a ball bearing. That was, and I mean, they picked that up in so many different angles. When they lifted it up, gravity always ruled that the cone will come into proper orientation. So if you test that and you practice that, I don't see why that would be a problem. I think that's one that we might have to, prototype and test it out ourselves, because, using those, like, I don't know what they call those dimple things that come in a kit, as, as added friction onto that paddle instead of using a drawer.
Jeremiah, how's your pneumatics coming? So for anybody who doesn't know, Jeremiah's with the Ashby team who were rookies last year. So I'm really excited to hear how the not quite rookies are doing, and what you're struggling with.
Well, my number one struggle usually is I need to pay kids $20 an hour so they can show up. Besides that, although the skeletal crew I've had recently, we've really pushed through, cutting out our base and getting all that stuff configured. In the meantime, we have two mechanisms that we are going to probably, work on, because we have back-to-back competitions. One of the things that we're wrestling with is probably have a mechanism A and a mechanism B. While we're still out during, build season, because what happens, you go to Duluth and mechanism A breaks and you don't have enough time, the turnaround to come up with something. And the issue is how now you have those two mechanisms. Like if you can quickly remove one and not to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 days to reinstall the other one. And that's kind of one of our plans. We're kind of looking at combining the elevator. How you call it, the Thrifty Bot. They have a one-stage elevator system that we can utilize with the Andy Mark one-stage climber to, and at the end of that climber, instead of having a hook there, we just want to, then that's where we kind of want to use it. That's why we want to use air compression, compressed gas to That's the only area we really want to use compressed gas for the most part. If we need to at some other point, we might. Are we going to, for something we haven't done before, I just want us to do it on one mechanism and see if we can have a better understanding of it before you start having, multiple solenoid and whatnot fittings here and fit in there and the wiring. But for the most part, I think I have 3 girls join the team this year one was from last year, 2 joined, and the one from last year is now actually stepping out of her shell, and she's done the wiring on our practice base. And watching her on Saturday, after they reassembled the robot 3 or 4 different times, rewiring it, it was just a joy watching her do that without me saying anything about that. So far, some good news. The lack of experience is what's going to really be our biggest challenge this season, but it'll work out. I figure harassing you guys and Corey and then anyone else in NMRC, we'll get there.
Is anyone else paying their students $20 an hour to go to meetings? I mean, we might have a bunch of night callers driving up to Ashby for $20 an hour.
We just bribe them.
I wish I had the funding source to pay them $20 an hour. We would have no problem whatsoever,
I did see that mechanism where it sort of clamps in and the cube spins. Has anyone else seen that, or is anyone else planning to build that as a mechanism?
Well, I think we definitely looked at that right at the beginning, that right after the release, that it made sense to just grab it with some ball bearings. It would automatically right itself. So definitely that's, I never thought that wasn't in the plan.
Yeah, we saw that and we like that idea, and we're going to try to prototype it. Our main concern is it getting a solid grip on whatever it's holding and not losing it. But yeah.
And that's kind of where I was talking about. They have those, I don't know what they call, the honeycomb type. Is that plastic bump on material? I've seen that come in a kit, last year, and it came in a kit again. And if you create a surface area wide enough, and you line that stuff with it, I think with that plastic, material, it's a plastic material, but it has a nice frictional, contact too, that it won't just slip. That's kind of what I was looking at on Saturday with that, trying to see how much, rubbing I can do on that, or, shaking it. We haven't really built our grabber yet to tell you for sure if it has any loss of contact, but I think that's. And the other thing I thought about that too is it has to also have to do with your point of contact too, how low to the ground you can get with that. If you have a full bumper like we do, you might have to be coming from an angle that you can go a lot lower to kind of get to the base of the cone, because if the closer to the base you pick it up, the better your chances are to. And also having your grabber, because the original prototype dudes were saying, if you have 2 pistons come together, that might be best, mechanism. But I also think if you have long enough piston that can go all the way, leaving about having enough, like an inch or 2 compression, you should be fine too. It's worth. That's kind of what our next week is gonna be.
Anyone else have anything they want to share in their? Oh, go ahead, Eric. Good, thank you.
Has anybody had any experience with the cubes yet? We've already blown one up. So
we have also popped ours.
We popped one. We're testing the electrical tape patch.
Yep.
How's that worked? I'm not sure ours held, but
I think ours seemed to have worked the rest of the meeting, but that was on Saturday. So when we go in next, we'll take a look if it looks like it's deflated.
I was really impressed with the cube that we had that popped, that it didn't blow out a seam. I just assumed, because we squeezed it too tight, I just assumed that if you squeeze this cube too tight, it was going to blow out a seam. But for us, it blew out right in the middle of a panel. There's like a quarter size.
We lost it at the seam.
You lost yours at the seam. That's good. That's good information.
I think that'll be harder to fix probably with the piece of tape. Ours was dead smack in the middle, so we just
That electrical tape probably would be much better.
Yeah, I don't see electrical tape holding very well in the seam. Do you, Eric? Did you buy more, or was that your only?
Oh yeah, but we're afraid we don't want to go through them.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, now that we have one that's got tape on it, that'll be the one we use for all the scary things until we have more confidence.
So I'm going to ask strategies. Has anybody thought about having robots deliver and having a good placer used, or do you think everybody should be running back and forth?
Well, our team actually decided on a strategy to be a low goal cycling bot due to our capabilities and what we thought our limits were this year, and us having a tank drive instead of the ability to do swerve yet, because we didn't do it over the off season. So instead we decided on having a really tiny robot, and then we're going to use a shifting gearbox that will allow us to do really quick cycles from the station. And we figured that, to be a really strong member of an alliance, we'd want to be able to basically give the scoring robot basically the ability to do double the cycles, because if that robot gets picked, you're missing out on a second high scoring robot. So then we determined to do that, we'd probably want to be able to do 10 to 12-ish cycles per match, which lined up to around 12 seconds per cycle, which is our current target right now. But we also want to be able to score in those areas on our own, so that if we don't have a high goal robot in our match, we can just fill out the entire bottom row and still get 33 points.
Ian, I think that's a great strategy. I will have a question for you. Your mechanism that holds your game pieces, can you shoot them? Like launch them?
We're still prototyping the mechanism to hold our game pieces. So because we're not building, an arm or a elevator or anything, hopefully that's going to give us, the ability to focus on creating a really strong intake. And there has been some talk of some of the ones that we've been looking at having the ability to toss cubes to mid or possibly high.
Well, the reason why I was asking is, in our simulation, we did a human simulation where the students pretended to be the robots, and they acted like the strategy of the robots. And we found the delivery method was actually a very, very positive way of building an alliance. But what was interesting is that as soon as your bumpers cross into your community, you can now launch that thing. So you could just basically touch your charging station and launch a cube or a cone over top that charging station to land on the floor for whatever the robot is that's picking it up. Then you don't have to drive all the way into the community and dump it off. And you also don't have to worry about sort of the traffic of people coming around either side of the switch or the charging station. So I think it's going to be exciting to see if we have short little fast robots that deliver stuff and just toss them over top of the charging station. I think that's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I think the question we're trying to ask right now is whether or not we think we need the ability to upright cones, because if we're planning on, picking them from the chute where they could be tipped over, the question is, if we can't upright cones, then are we going to be, not able to be a delivery bot? Because if the bot we're delivering to can't upright the cones. So we're kind of, stuck in that above. How many robots do we think will be able to upright cones on their own?
That's a good point.
Scott, I was going to point out that launching rule, it's not bumpers, it's just any part of the robot.
That's a good point.
You could have a 4-foot thing out in front of your robot and shoot from pretty far back.
That's right. Yeah. I get corrected on. I've been corrected on that now twice before you pointed it out. It's if you've got an arm that extends out, you can just plop it over top of the switch. That counts too. You don't even have to be in the community.
Yeah, there's some really strange boundary rules in this game, so I expect confusion to reign.
That also means that if there isn't anybody in your opponent's loading station, you could just pop over there and just shoot them over the wall too, right?
Yeah,
So
we
get out of there before somebody else comes.
we did get our Chris made up our mock-ups of the posts in the scoring area. That cube does bounce quite a bit on that, though. We found that if you get more than about 3 feet away, it can bounce out pretty easy.
One of the things
The
that
other
we
qu-
were one of the things that
Sorry.
we were talking about in terms of launching was doing a 2 cone or 2 cube auto. If we had enough time to go back and get a third, could we just spin around and just throw it, and maybe it would bounce into one of the bottom scoring places, and you get an extra point for having scored it in auto.
Well, the good thing about that scoring system is that scoring area is the cones pretty much end up in the bottom if you hit anything up there, as long as they don't end up in a cube thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, question here. I'm looking at the charging station. So we have, well, I think it's skinny bot, but it's not really skinny. It's a little bit off square-ish. It's like 28 by 30. Well, what I was thinking is it possible for one to put something on both ends of the robot that get deployed, hang some onto the inside of the other robots, so when all 3 robots are onto that station, you lock onto your alliance robot and just kind of like, you be the middle piece, and just kind of center that way. Is that something worth looking into?
Curious to know what the students think. Try not to have the mentors answering all the questions. Students, any feedback on that?
I think it's definitely a resources question. On Nightcrawler, we looked into like different buddy client systems, but so far we've kind of decided that, having any additional mechanisms that do that on the robot is just going to kind of take up space on an already restricted area. So probably not the right choice. I'm sure there will be teams that do that. But I think for us, it was just a question of, I don't know if we have the bandwidth to spend time on that.
So the things that apply are what that you have to keep in mind is that you still have to maintain the bumper height off the ground. So I think that adds some trickiness, I think, in the bumper zone.
I think a lot of teams also put plastic right out to the edges of their robot to protect their wiring. So getting inside to grab stuff might be tricky, and you might grab the wrong thing too. Nobody wants to have their wires ripped out.
Yeah.
I think that is a strategy that would work for finals. It'd be hard to kind of organize that in falls because you're sort of randomly partnering with people. But if you were doing alliance picks and you could sort of decide, oh, this is a good choice for us because we can do the buddy system, I think that's where all of that type of thing comes into play. Jeremiah brings up a really good point. How many people are planning to build a small robot, either just small footprint or narrow, maybe long one direction but narrow the other way? And how important are you guys strategizing that as?
I know we're trying to do the narrowest we can, if that still meets.
Yeah, it's not necessarily though narrow, because I mean the first thing you're going to want, the first robot up there is probably going to turn sideways, so it's actually length comes into play too. So because if you have 2 robots that are sloshing around, it's going to be really hard to balance it versus if there's one that's sideways and kind of stuck.
Are you still looking at sliding off the ramp onto a belly plate?
If it makes sense to do, yeah.
On the outside?
Yeah.
Well, can the three robots kind of communicate to, well, the players communicate and just kind of go up at the same time? So, in that way, because I think I was telling Scott earlier, part of after watching the reveal, I was thinking like there's a lot of human factor in this game that is just going to be beyond just programming and computer and robot doing thing. It's more of a human communication that's also going to be a factor too, because that's another thing where all three teams can say, "Hell, if you stick to your plan, 10 seconds left, let's go," and line up, regardless what's going on, because that's a big chunk of points. So if everyone do that flawlessly together, well, flawlessly is an
Yeah, my suspicion is what we're going to commonly see is one robot go up early, turn sideways, the other one balance it, and then you're going to hopefully have the points from before to get the rank point, at least in quals. In finals, it might get pretty dicey. So, but being able to go up there and stick up there is probably kind of important for a lot of teams, and letting out someone else just come up and slosh you around.
Yeah, and I think if you're going for the triple climb, that means each robot has something like 2 2/3 feet, because it's 8 feet wide total, which means, if you want to be a robot picked by a robot that might be, 3 feet wide, then you're going to be looking at trying to be a robot that's 24, 23 inches.
Yeah, and I know for No Mythic, we had, and we're still sort of prototyping, but we sort of come to the idea of having, or I guess this isn't a full idea, but we've explored the idea of having a robot that is wider, because we're going Swerve this year. So something that we had explored was being like a robot that is like the normal sort of width, but then is a lot shorter, so then we can just turn beforehand and then go on. And then that would allow also for weight distribution to be a bit better. Because if you have like a big elevator or something on one side of your robot, then your weight isn't all put off to one side then. So that's something that we had explored. But yeah.
So I have another subject. How are teams planning to communicate with the human players as to what kind of, whether they want a cube or a cone on another team? Has anybody thought about that?
We've been thinking LEDs.
Nightcrawler was also thinking yellow and purple LEDs.
Okay, that seems a general consensus then, yeah.
Or a big screen TV or something like that has a cone or a cube on it.
So are you saying since you're going across, you're saying alerting your human player what to have ready when you come over? Is that what you're asking?
Well, more of any of the human players, you might have a different human player loading you.
Okay.
So you want to communicate with them what you want.
Okay. So what payload you can pick up?
How would you also try to differentiate if you want it in the double substation up on the shelf or thrown to the ground?
I don't know, that you might do pre-batch as to what your preferences are, but knowing when you get there, I think talking about colored LEDs as to that'd be universal language as to be able to tell somebody from another team this is what we want right now.
Yeah, I'm curious how it'll play out with the 3 human players. Will they just follow their robot or hold their station? Maybe if a robot is focused only on a certain type, it won't matter. But I wonder if a robot goes to a different one, if the human players will just be running around.
Yeah, our team.
What I remember in 2017 was your human player would feed a lot of different robots. At least ours did, I know that. And there are teams that just don't have a human player too.
Well, this year, aren't there 3 spots? There's the 2 slide spots, and then there's like the dump spot on the side. So I think each team will have a human player. This might be the first game where that's the case. Is that true? Am I remembering that
Well,
right?
they can. That doesn't always mean they do.
Oh, really? I guess
Because I know we had a practice match at 10K where we were the only team that had human players. So we had to provide the pilot and the human player for both alliances.
Oh,
so we were feeding every gear and doing all the pickups. So that that happens.
Yeah, it's one of those things that's year to year, and like last year, the human players really didn't have necessarily a big role after auto. They had to make sure any balls that were maybe kicked out were pushed back in. But like frisbee, the year 2013, loading frisbees active. This year will be active. 2011 trying to throw the game pieces down to the other end. So this will be they'll be busy.
I'm not trying to change the subject, if I may ask a question. So new kid on the block here. Say hi, Josiah.
Hi.
That's my assistant coach.
Hi, Josiah.
Hi, Mr. Nate. All right, Josiah was building bumpers on Saturday. Anyway, so I was reading the nightly reading, booklet, and it says 5.5 inches for the bumper. Well, maybe my English is a little bit off, or because those brackets that is sent in the kit is 4.25 inch of plywood that can go in to join those together. So why are they saying 5.5 inches for the bumper?
I think it says 5 plus or minus 1/2 inch. So you can be anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5 inches. Nate, you're the rules expert on that, right? Is that right? 4.5 to 5.5 inches?
That's correct. Yeah, for this year. So.
Okay, thank you. Because I'm like, I told the kids to build a bumper anyway based on the kit that they sent us. And I was going to ask today, and if it was a problem, then we can go from there. But we weren't going to lose productivity time, because we didn't understand that aspect of the rule. Hang on 1 second, Josiah. And my last question, not my last question for the night, but going along with that too is, does it help to have an 8-inch wheel over a 6-inch wheel? Because going up to that charge station with clearance, that's kind of, where my mind been going. Like, with the bumper detached, and then depending on the confusion, the chaos going on, what does it say about an 8-inch wheel, having a little bit of an advantage, having that one extra inch to give you that clearance?
Yeah, I assume you're using the kit chassis, right, Jeremiah? Yep. So we haven't looked at that chassis with this year's game, but kind of the trade-offs there are making sure that extra inch of ground clearance is going to be beneficial versus your bumper height mounting on it to keeping it under the maximum bumper height. But also I'm a little bit worried about a cone becoming a nice wedge for a robot at speed too, getting underneath the bumpers too. So we haven't got to that problem yet solving. Once we get a driving chassis, we'll have to figure that out. But yeah, getting the clearance, you don't have to just give it a good push up the ramp. You want to control, but yeah, we'll have to see ourselves.
Yeah, and I know that our team this year is probably going to decide on using 8-inch pneumatic wheels, because that's going to allow us to cycle over the charging station a lot faster and keep us out of the way of robots that might have a harder time doing that, like a swerve chassis. And that would allow us to, because we're going to be really light and going pretty fast. We did some calculations, and one of our mentors doesn't think that the charge station is going to be fully tipped down by the time you get over it if we're going our full 18 feet a second that we're planning on going. So that means that, we're going to need the clearance to, get over it and, hopefully not end up in the air too much.
I'm picturing Dukes of Hazzard.
Are you using pneumatic wheels so that you bounce on the other side?
I mean, partially, but also to just help get over that lip without, jumping too much.
I mean,
if you're
an 8-inch chassis with pneumatic wheels probably would just run over any cubes rather than getting stuck on them. I mean, it's an interesting idea. I'm really excited to see if that's what you guys end up doing.
Just make sure you're holding on to a game piece when you land in the grid. It's going to count.
Hey, speaking of wheels, you know those nitrile traction wheels? We have some of those, and the problem we having is the assembly. Do you set it up like you do with the axle hub system? Do you set it up like you would do with the high grip with those high grip wheels? Because the pulley system does not stop at Josiah Amos. The pulley system does not go perfectly around that, because like on the high grip wheels, the pulleys were sinking and then you can, fasten it on, but it doesn't do that on those blue wheels.
What wheels do you have, Jeremiah?
Well, we have those, we have some 6-inch high traction, those natural wheels, the one with the blue strips
with the aluminum billet.
Yeah.
Or are they black?
Oh, the one no, we have the black one. Sorry.
Plaction?
Yes.
It looks like I'm just pulling it up now.
So the high grips come in a blue variation that's a different diameter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Plaction wheel is a plastic wheel with the nitrile tread.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's set up. It has it on their page, use with axle and hub sprocket bearing thread, but it looks like it has the same bolt pattern to attach, I would think, the
pulleys
for the KOP. But I haven't done it myself
But the pulley sits right on top of it. It doesn't, like on a high grip wheel, it would just sit in, but I sit on top. And I'm wondering if that's intentional design, or is there something that we don't know how to get a hold of? Because we were thinking about using high grip wheels for our center wheel and those 4 wheels on the end. So, when you get up onto the charge station, because that's plexiglass, it can be a little slippery. So that will help also to kind of keep us, stay on without sliding back.
The blue nitrile tread, it works great on carpeting because it is it interlocks with the carpeting, kind of digs in because it's really a bumpy surface. And so when you're actually on a smooth surface like the polycarb, I don't think it provides quite the grip as you would from a smooth style wheel, like maybe some of the others, the offerings.
I think the nitrile is still better than the high grips on polycarb based on 2012.
Okay. Yeah, I don't remember. One thing that might work well, and I can't necessarily speak to, would be the gray ones. I'm forgetting their name right now. Coulson.
My only worry, Jeremiah, is that a number of years ago, I think they solved the issue, but the high grips and the spokes on the ones you're looking at, they had some issues where when you hit a bump at speed, the spoke would break, and they reworked the design. And not a lot of people are using those wheels, and so there might not be a lot of people with spares at competition. So if that did happen to you and you have no spares,
bring your own spares.
Bring your own spares.
Well, and that's kind of what I was thinking was, get 2 sets of those, because I kind of been one of those people buying a little bit of anything here and there while it's still in inventory, because it's just something we want to try that. Because I did tell you, Scott, going across a field with the blue wheels, it might give you a good contact to, with those get a part because we're not doing anything different than what just came in our kit. We're going with the tough mini gearbox boxes, and so anything that will give us a little bit of a contact, so we can friction slows you down, but friction also gives you stability in motion too. So that's something too. I'm trying to convince the kids. Friction is not always a bad guy. He's a good guy sometimes.
If you mix up the wheels, really make sure. I know they say they're an 8-inch wheel. Like the 8-inch pneumatic wheel is really not 8 inches in diameter. It's slightly less. So if you're going to have different wheels on the middle versus the outside, on the kit chassis, I think the drop in the middle is about an 1/8 inch. And so you'd want to make sure that you aren't getting rid of that drop, because that's what allows you to turn, because you're only at the middle and then one end. And so if you had it such that the outer wheels are really gripping in to the carpeting, you might have difficulty turning.
Thank you. That's a really good point. I didn't even think about that.
Is anyone looking at building two mechanisms for manipulating game pieces? For example, maybe an intake that goes into a hopper and then an elevator and arm that takes it out of the hopper, or maybe something that does kind of quick pickup in any orientation and delivers it, but then a different mechanism that can get things in a specific orientation to do high placement. John says he is, or his team is. Anyone else doing two mechanisms?
We're thinking about doing two mechanisms, but not in that way. We are thinking about doing two intakes, one on either side of the robot, that would specialize for cubes or cones, because in prototyping, we kind of discovered that while there were mechanisms that could do cubes and cones effectively, the best ones for each weren't as fast. Like, they were faster than the combined mechanisms. So we're thinking that we might do two separate intakes for that, because that would help improve our cycle time, which is our key aim right now.
That's very clever. I think you might be the first person I've heard say that strategy, but I like it. That's good. I think Nightcrawler, we've decided that we want to make sure that we can pick up cones the best. And if it takes a little bit longer to pick up cubes, that's fine, but we're focusing on cones. We've decided that that's our best strategy.
We've been thinking about two-stage like that too. I have students here though, maybe they didn't want me to say that, but that's what we've been thinking about: pick up and then try to orient inside of the robot, process it inside.
Is Nightcrawler, as part of your strategy in picking up cones, also to be able to pick them up in any orientation and then flip them so they're upright?
We're trying to pick them up in any orientation. Mostly, we'll have to see. I mean, we're planning on picking them up from the standing on the shelf from the substation. It just, right now we're hopeful, but I guess once we get an actual better prototype thing working, it'll end up using whatever one is the fastest. But we're not limiting ourselves to that. But we'll have to see. I mean, kind of hopeful right now, but until it really is on a robot working, running around, the prototype may say, "Hey, this looks promising," but we might be sad a week and a half from now, and we'll see.
We have a goal of picking them up if they're tipped over, but it's a goal at this point. We haven't proven that we can do it.
Picking them up if they're tipped over is one thing. Picking them up if they're tipped over and then turning them so they're upright when you deliver them to the goal is a second thing. I'm kind of curious about the second thing.
Our goal includes the second thing.
Okay.
I'm curious, for those people who aren't building an intake into a hopper, how afraid are you of having your elevator tweaked because you took an impact in your pickup mechanism on the end of an arm or on the end of an elevator? Somebody drives by and rips everything off your robot. That's a fear that I have with our team, is that we're
inner circle that is still got.
That's what cost us state in 2019.
was having our intake ripped off our robot.
I mean, from a traffic flow standpoint, this game is pretty similar to 2017, and there were some really hard hits in 2017. So,
Yeah, I think this is going to be a high impact game. So pick up things in the middle of the field at your own risk, I think.
Well, we're definitely looking at retracting our intake. So hopefully it's not out there very long.
And that's kind of what we're thinking too, is because when the kids were coming up after the reveal of some of the ideas that were coming up with, I was like, you don't want to be hanging on to your target sticking out and racing across the field because that's a target for something else to be destroyed. And so grab your game piece, which pull back within your frame, the parameter of your robot, drives away with it. Because if someone's going to play dirty and sticking, and then that's a whole separate ball game. You hope that it never happens, but it's just one of those things where it's like, with us not having machine shop and a lot of other things we rely on, Andy Mark and other companies, what they make, and just use that as our built parts because we really can't make anything at our school. We don't have the capability to do those things.
I was going to say in 2017, I think the hardest hit we took was actually from a partner. We just happened to be trying to cross together. So,
Has anybody, something that we've talked about a little bit is something that comes out around maybe where you're picking something up, almost like a guardrail or something. Has anybody thought about or toyed around with that idea and come up with anything?
Are you talking about like around the parameter of your base?
Yeah, like if you had your arm out and then you were going to be hit, like another thing coming out around that mechanism.
Because one of my students were talking just about that on Saturday, to the other three sides of the robot to use maybe some kind of a polycarbon material, use that to kind of create some kind of a safe mechanism shield from other robot accidentally, especially for wiring, rip something off one of your elevator, who knows, air hose going along and someone because accidents can happen. You just don't want to be on the recipient end of it too. So that's kind of what we're thinking about, maybe something in that respect to do that.
well, they had that rule clarification on Thursday, so you can't break the plane of the sides of it. So you have to keep it on that side of the robot. They made a clarification on that. So
what was that?
There was a clarification on Thursday to the rules for the extension out of one side rule.
Mm-hmm.
And what they said is you can't come out one side and have like an L that goes across to the other side.
Okay.
So if you're protecting, you might run into that type of stuff. So
okay. I think based on what we're looking at is we're pretty much gonna be a one, because I've seen some robot in 3 days that can go from like back and then flip over completely 180 degrees and and discard, and that's all great, but I think this is our second year, right, Scott? So trying to keep things clean and simple is what I keep telling the kids. Keep it, try different mechanisms that we haven't done before, but keep it clean and simple. It's that's our theme this year, really. I had a question for you guys, but it will come back. Just say I came and knocked that out of my head, but it will come back.
We've been talking a lot about the build. Has anybody's programmers gone off and gone crazy with April tags or any of the new things that we're seeing this year from a controls point of view? Or working with coprocessors. Anybody got any things they want to advice they want to share on using a coprocessor for anything?
We're probably going to be using Raspberry Pi 4s for our April tag. I think you said you were going to do that also, or was it maybe that was another team?
I don't think I said that, but I think there's a good chance we'll probably run a Pi 4 for the April tags thing. We definitely want to test the April tags code in WPI lib running on the Rover Rio. But we're not very optimistic that the image processing on a 4K or an HD webcam is going to be very good running on the Rover Rio. We do have a Rover Rio 2 this year. I don't know if everyone was able to snag one of those in the past 6 months. So the Rover Rio 2 has a little bit more memory, a little bit of processor, I believe. So maybe we'll be able to do onboard image processing, but I believe our controls captain is he couldn't make it tonight, but I believe they're expecting to do a Pi image for April tags as well.
If we decide to use April tags, we're probably going to be going for Photon Vision or the Limelight. I've messed around with Photon Vision at my house and I got it working pretty well. And the question just is, will that perform better than the Limelight?
That's a great point. Have you tested it with the Limelight? Because I know that we have a Limelight 2 Plus, and I don't believe we've updated it to test the April tag stuff yet. Have you guys done that with Limelight?
So Code Team hasn't tested too much with the Limelight yet. We've been focusing on helping out Prototype and then also just updating everything for the new season. But once we do, we're gonna test it out between that, a Raspberry Pi or Glowworm with Photon Vision, because Glowworm overclocks the Limelight, so it technically should run faster at the cost of how long the hardware lasts. So those are all the things that if we decide to use April tags this year, because also with the robot design we're using, we're still figuring out of, do we want to use the April tags for localization? How much use will that be for us versus other things programming could be doing?
That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. Are any teams thinking about object tracking the game elements? So Ian, what are you guys planning on? How are you planning to approach that?
So, with our 12-second cycle time, which holy crap, that's scary. That we're talking about, part of that is, being able to, if we're able to get into the loading zone and just, have something where it can, so we'd probably use OpenCV on a Raspberry Pi, and if we're able to get our hands on a Limelight 3, those can do it now. So that would be, if we can get it in time, which I'm not, betting on. But we'd probably use that. But if we can't, we're planning on, if we end up doing it. And this is a very heavy if, because we kind of started working on it last year and didn't really fully get there. And on our priorities, it's, lower than getting an auto balance working, getting a potentially 2 game piece autonomous working. So it's lower on those lists, but using the options we have of typical vision, we'd be using it basically to aim our robot automatically at a game piece we'd find, just to intake it and automate that last part, which should make things a little easier on the drivers.
Nate, do you remember, it was in 2019, I think it was Thunder Chickens released an OpenCV that ran in a Pi that could do the orange ball detection. We did Raspberry Pi image processing in 2019, and we used, I think it was Thunder Chickens, but it was a chicken, somebody chickens, open sourced, and it was a kind of a community, some type of a community development thing where we downloaded it and we struggled with it, but we were able to get it to work, and it worked okay. But that was before we had a Limelight. We used it for reflective tape. We used it for reflective tape, but it also had orange ball code in there. That was also part of that image. So that might be a resource you could go out and dig out if you're planning to use OpenCV. There might be some good image tracking code in that OpenCV library if you can track it down.
So we used the Pixie in 2019, and we were driving after balls in about half a day. Object detection took all of 30 minutes from taking the camera out of the box the first time. And then, yeah, we had a
thumbs up on the Pixie Cam too. The FTC team that Nate and I coached last year used a Pixie Cam to do object detection.
Yeah, and they're like $70. So, I mean, you could put multiple on a robot if you really wanted to, and chase after balls in all directions.
So do you plan to use multiple cameras?
We haven't thought about cameras and objects or targets at all.
Because
So
to use multiple cameras, you'd have to use the I2C interface and chain them. And remember last year, if you used any I2C interfaces, it would hard crash the RoboRio 10% of the time.
yeah.
I hope they've tracked that down and they've solved that problem.
So our setup was using an Arduino, I believe. So we ran the pic into an Arduino and then the Arduino output.
Got it.
We had a lot of trouble just getting the wiring to work out with the protocols. So
The older Limelights are also, he's promising support for object detection. You have to have a Google Coral to plug into it. He says it's going to track cubes, cones, upright, cones, knockdown, and other robots. So getting a hold of a Google Coral at a reasonable price is tough on top of your $400 Limelight, but we're kind of hoping it'll work. We managed to borrow one and plugged it in, and it does object detection now, but it's just the like DetectNet trained thing. So it finds clocks and computers and people, but it doesn't do anything with game pieces just yet.
Yeah, the biggest challenge with that is just, can you get a Google Coral without spending, whatever the scalpers want us to pay for it right now?
Right. Yeah, it looks like they're like $175, but who knows if they're actually going to show up when you order them too, when you do it that way.
Is this Coral, CORAL.ai? Am I on the right website?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, wow. I had not heard of this before.
Yeah, so you plug that into your Limelight.
81 week lead time on Mouser.
What'd you say about Mouser?
They're 81-week lead time.
Right. Yep.
Which is not the longest lead time I've been told in the last week. So
what is everybody struggling to get supply chain wise?
I have work problems.
Students.
$20 an hour.
Oh man.
I've been trying to get Falcon motors for a while, and we've just not been able to get any of them.
Yeah, I saw that they had a delayed. I've been watching that, but I saw that they were planning an early January big shipment of Falcons. But has that happened, or is that still coming?
I am unsure so far.
Last I heard was the 23rd they might be available, but who knows?
Hey, I got a question here for you experts.
Well, before that, I want to mention that Ryan Swanson did say that his team has 2 Falcons they're not planning to use. So if 2 would do it for you, Ryan Swanson, he's with the Sauk Rapids team, but I don't remember their number. But he said they did have 2 Falcons they'd be willing to sell that are still in the box.
It's Sartell which
I
is a
think he sold
suburb
it.
of St. Cloud, and it's 60-45.
It's Sartell. You're right. It's
Yeah,
Sartell.
starts out.
And Neos, I think, are back in stock now. So we did that instead because Falcons have been so hard to get a hold of.
Neos are, Spark Maxes are not.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't
No,
help you
Andy
much.
Mark got some Spark Max now.
There's
But
gonna
what-
be another Rev Spark Max restock next week, I think. If I've been
I think
told.
it said the 25th on their website.
Chief Delphi close enough. Okay.
But doesn't Andy Mark still have Spark Max? Because I checked this morning.
Yeah, they
and
look like they're in stock
it was
right
still
now.
in stock because I'm about to nab 2 of those.
Yep.
You know, at the end of this meeting, it's just something to have on hand because, you know. Hey, can I ask that question now to you experts? Because, okay, we have this. I told you guys earlier we're thinking about doing the elevator combined with the extending arm, the climber from last year. Now the problem that we run into is how to not go. I have a tendency of not trying to get over my own head because then my students don't have the experience, and so then that becomes more of a problem. And so, what would you recommend to? Because we want the climber to, you know, to be mounted to the elevator to come down and you know, up and down, and so when it goes out to. We still don't know how we're gonna mount the climber to the elevator. Have you seen those Drifty Bot elevator? They have they come in 2 stage and 1 stage. We bought the single stage. We didn't feel like we needed 2 stages.
So Jeremiah, what is your team's strategy? Are they trying to get to score on all 3 levels? Are they trying to do cubes and cones? Are they trying to be able to pick up from the ground or just the feeder stations?
Well, okay, we are trying to do up to the 2nd level. The 3rd, no. We're trying to keep our goal on the 1st and 2nd level, and most of the thing we discuss is because being newer and also inexperienced too. I don't know if it would serve us better to go to the station to pick up versus pick up game pieces on the field, and that's kind of why we're looking at the ball bearing paddle hand, free movable ball bearing paddle that will pick up a sideway cone, to correct itself. So you're not spending time trying to correct that because that's not valuable use of time. As to yeah, I think I answered your question. So that's kind of what we're thinking, tier 1, tier 2, what, and also both game pieces,
So I'm trying to look up right now, but one thought is how wide is the hybrid area, and can your robot be narrow enough to fit between that? I don't think that's reasonable, right? Like, could you drive up closer, right? Or straddle one of those legs that sticks out of the grid so that you can get closer, so you don't have to reach out as far, right? Rather than being able to reach farther, can you get closer to it? And then the thing is, it's 1 foot 10 3/4 inch to the center of that post from the end of that bar on the ground, right? Which is far, but it's not extensively far, right? Can you so putting the telescopic tube on there might make sense, but there might be other ways that you can do it with less degrees of freedom. And then that maybe lend themselves to a simpler mounting perspective or simpler mounting problem. I don't know. Thoughts? Anyone else?
Jeremiah, are you planning to have this arm that's mounted in your elevator just extend straight out, or are you planning on having it being able to rotate as well?
Extend out and be able to go up and down, because That way it stays within the parameter of our robot. You know,
Is it how much can it go up and down with just two positions? Like, can you use a piston, or do you have to use a motor to be able to rotate it because you need infinite degrees of freedom?
that's kind of one of the questions I was going to ask you guys. Which one do you think serves better, using a piston where you just get a long piston to kind of with a long piston, can you is it quarter way, 1/2, 3/4?
No.
Full extension, or is it all in or none?
It's in or out. You can there is a trick that Nightcrawler has done in the past, and Nate reminded me of this last night, where you can take, let's say that you need a 20-inch range, you need to contract either 6 inches or 12 inches. You can take two pistons and kind of bolt them together with a plate on each end, or probably something better than zip ties, but you put them together and then you have them go in opposite directions, and then you can extend them both, retract them both, or just extend one. So that is a tricky way that you could get multiple positions with two pistons in a single sort of linear action. But you can't extend a piston partially. That's not going to work.
So probably then go with a motor system that you can just do a chain drive.
If you need infinite degrees of freedom, that's probably going to be your only choice. One of the things that we like to challenge our students on of, do we really need all the positions in the world, or can we get by with one or two or three? Because if you can get by with just a piston, it's much easier to manage. It's 2 lines of code. It's just easier for everybody all around.
So with that being said, because then the elevator brings the arm all the way down and pick up the target, pick up the game piece, But see, the issue is then. Oh, I see. Never mind.
Yeah. So the other question to Jeremiah is, if your arm can extend and rotate, do you need to be able to lift the arm up and down? Or is there a spot you can mount it where the rotation and the extension is sufficient and you don't need the elevator at all?
True.
Yeah,
Right,
especially if you mounted your arm sort of maybe 2 feet off the ground, and then can your arm do everything rather than having the arm have to start low?
So you remember at the beginning of this, I kind of said we also wanted to do a 2 mechanism, mechanism A and a mechanism B, just in case we run into a nightmare situation. And that was the other thing I was thinking, is maybe if we don't do what I was set to do, is use that elevator, put it at an angle that it can on a pulley, comes down, extends out, pick up the game piece. That would be our second. That would be like our backup mechanism because that can be easily mounted on the frame of the robot, and just a little bit of a tweaking of the wire, and that shouldn't take days and of craziness. What do you think?
How big is your team?
How big of a team we have?
Yeah, how many students?
On a good day, I get 3 kids.
So do you want to divide your students and your resources among several ideas, or go for one and maybe make spare parts? Because how it goes, a lot of times it's not that much more effort to make 2 of something when you're already making one.
True. So baby, just get two climbers, and then just have that as our backup.
Or look at what parts you think are gonna in a collision or in a failure, which parts are gonna fail, and make backups of those. So if you're worried about your mounting of the arm, make backup parts for mounting the arm.
Okay.
Right? If you're worried about the connection between the grabber and the arm, make extra parts for that.
Okay.
Right? So because it's easier for someone to make 2 of the same thing than it is to come up with a whole nother design and try and work out all the issues with it and then build all those parts.
I love these guys. Thank you, guys.
And also take a look at where the easiest place to replace that is, because I know it might be Talon. I know there's somebody from Talon on the call here, but I believe Talon or maybe it's Green Machine. They bring an entire intake replacement pre-built because it's the quickest thing to swap on and off to replace the whole intake rather than taking out a bent bar.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking because like he was it Jason who just said that? You know, it's like, well, I just built a barn. I've spent 3 hours fighting on one corner. After that, I would just spend like 10, 15 minutes, just boom, boom, boom. But you know, like you said, once you perfect or master one mechanism that you know and replicating it might be an easier spend of time or resources than trying to figure out two separate variables that might. So creating maybe a second of the same kind, a replica of it, might just be a easier, you know, switch out. Hey, we have this part broken up. Switch the whole thing out. Just you know.
To Scott's point, right? If you ever watched Formula One, right, they change tires really fast.
Yeah.
Right, but they're not changing tires; they're changing wheels.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, they're going to take the tires off those wheels and put different tires on. Right, but they're not doing it in the middle of the race. Right, they're not getting out there and pulling the tire off that wheel and putting a new tire on, even though all they need different is the tire.
Yeah.
They're taking the whole wheel with the tire
yeah.
and popping it out. Right.
Yeah.
And so if you can find spots where you can do the same thing, where you can swap the whole piece and then your students in the pit while the match is going on can then swap out the thing that's actually broken.
Well, this is from Talon. We I know from last year we didn't do full replacement, but we figured what parts would break, and we made a lot of them. And then in the pits, we were pretty good to be able to replace any part that broke at some point. But we'd focus on the parts that were most vulnerable.
And Edina is really good at bringing full mechanisms because they already learned what breaks, because they usually break everything well before they get to competition. I've seen it all happen, and I've seen it break, and then they show up to competition. They brought a whole mechanism because they broke 5 different parts inside that mechanism in 5 different instances. So
in 2018, we brought an entire replacement elevator. Back then, we had the 30-pound withholding, and I think our replacement elevator weighed 29.5 pounds.
Yeah.
We do that quite often. We find the parts that are the hardest to replace, and we build complete modules of them with all the parts pre-mounted, pre-measured, pre-everything. So it's a matter of a few bolts or a couple shaft collars or whatever, and we can take that whole thing out, put it in, and it's a matter of minutes rather than trying to build a whole new thing in the pit. And it takes us a couple minutes to replace a part, and we're done and we're back out there and good to go. And we built a complete module to replace the swerve module the other day, so that because we only have 4 swerve modules, so we have a caster and everything, so that if a swerve module goes, we can throw that underneath our robot and we're good to go back out for a match in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, I was going to say at Worlds last year, 3512 was across from us, and we looked around their pits and we realized they had an entire other robot there. Basically, if you started looking, they basically had every piece of their robot there. They could have built a robot and had it out there in 10 minutes.
At Seven Rivers last year, Pawnage had a entire turret, their entire intake and turret. All they had to do was swap the swerve modules onto it, and they had another robot.
And you can do the rules change where you used to only have 30 pounds of pre-assembled spare parts, but now you can take there isn't a limit to poundage, right?
No, it's totally open. You can have as many spare parts as you want, spare mechanisms, right? As long as they're identical.
Yeah, you just cannot have a finished robot.
Yeah, you can't have a way to move it.
All right. Well, we've gone beyond our hour, actually an hour and 20 minutes. Is there anything else anybody wants to make sure they sneak in before we close things out for the day? And is this something we want to do again next week? Okay, so next week we'll go back to 7 o'clock. I only pushed it back to 7:30 tonight because the Vikings were playing, and I was worried nobody would show up. So we'll go back to 7 o'clock next week. We'll do it again on Sunday night, and I'll send out an email invite to um, the mailing list sign up. I put that in there, the Jot form. It's the last link that's in the chat. So send that off to your friends and your mentors and your students if they want to join us next week. And then usually Thursday, Friday, I send out the email with the link to the Google Meet meeting. Send it out to anybody that you want to on your team that you want to have join, or other teams too. But so last call. Any last questions for the next week before we meet?
Yeah. Are you allowed to give us a sort of preview of what that next meeting might entail?
Oh, well, that's a great question. Last week I said, what do you guys want to talk about next week? Because I think David, I'm picking on David every time. David wants to give a presentation on good wire management, and I know that's not true. He wants somebody else to give him a presentation on good wire management. But the consensus last week was let's just hear what people are struggling with and what ideas they have for at the end of week 1. I'm happy if somebody actually has something that's specific topic they want to chat about. I'm happy to kind of focus on that. Otherwise, I think we'll just kind of do a what did we learn or whatever our strategy until people don't want to share anymore, and then we can pick a topic. I know that our team is spending a lot of time learning some new things in Onshape that we had not learned before, and that's been very interesting to get some of those skills. So if somebody wants to talk about CAD next week, I'm happy to share our tips there. But I like the idea of it just being open and just bring your questions. But if you have a topic, I mean, do you have something, Joseph, that you want to talk about?
Yeah, definitely less technical related, but I'm I don't know. I'm the operations captain of my team, and so I really love hearing about what different teams have planned as far as like business or outreach, like those aspects of the team as far as what they have planned for the build season, different like non-robot related projects that they're planning on doing throughout the build season. That's again less robot related, obviously, but
I'm happy to reserve half the meeting for that. What does everybody think? Yes. All right. Well, let's plan to bring it up. I think we'll do the first half of the meeting. We'll talk about status and questions people have, and then we can shift gears. I think it's great. I know that we're working on the Impact Award now. I don't know how other people are approaching the Impact Award, but there might be some things that in those realms. Lexi, who's on the call with, she's managing our Impact Award for Nightcrawler. So those are I think those are all important topics. Good suggestion, and thank you for bringing that up. All right. Well, if there isn't anything else, thank you all for joining, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, I dropped a link in the meeting notes or in the like messages of I took rough meeting notes. So if there was anything that you were like, oh, we talked about a topic and there was something that you wanted to add or like grab something from there. Obviously this is recorded too, but for people who want to read instead.
Can someone click on that and make sure that you have access to it, not being part of Nightcrawler? Okay.
Yeah, there's people on it. It's good.
Awesome. Perfect. I always want to check before I hang up on everybody. All right. Sounds great. Hey, this was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it for this week's FRC Roundtable. Join us live all season long, every Sunday night. Visit the website at team2052.com/roundtable to sign up for weekly invites. In the meantime, keep building, keep learning, and we'll see you next week.